For today's You Can't Make It Up segment, you will never guess what Mayor Pete had to say about building things in America.
The fact that it is so hard to build and do things in this country, and I lived this when I was at the Department of Transportation. We got 20,000 infrastructure projects done, but we could have done more if it were easier to complete the things that we start in this country, and we could have done it more efficiently with our dollar. There's a lot of work that needs to be done.
We're all trying to find the guy who did this.
When Secretary Buttigieg oversaw the Department of Transportation, they had programs like spending $7.5 billion to build EV charging stations and only building 8 of them in about 3 years when they had promised to build hundreds of thousands of them. And the reason for that delay had a lot to do with Secretary Buttigieg and his leadership at the Department of Transportation, where they prioritized equity rules over actually building. In order to qualify for a grant, applicants must demonstrate how meaningful public involvement inclusive of disadvantaged communities will occur throughout a project's life cycle. That public involvement is vague and includes things like hosting multicultural neighborhood block parties. So again, in order to build an EV charging station under Pete Buttigieg, you had to hold a multicultural neighborhood block party to make a case to the community that you cared about equity for everyone involved. This is a major issue for Democrats as they move forward. When you look at things like California's high-speed rail and the fact that they began that project in 1979, years before I was born, and are now celebrating the fact that only part of it will be completed by 2045 when I am in my 50s, that is the consequence of liberal governance and overregulation, and Mayor Pete, in so many ways, is the current modern, newly bearded face of it. Now, I want to give a shout out to an important bill that is being pushed by my first boss in Washington, Mike Lee, along with Senator Ted Cruz, called the REINS Act. The REINS Act would prevent major regulations, those imposing compliance costs of at least $100 million, from taking effect without being passed by Congress, not just rubber stamped by unelected bureaucrats. This is one of the most important things for the Trump administration and Republicans while they're in power to deal with. Joe Biden introduced more consequential regulations that drove up the cost of building and the cost of everything in our lives, more regulations than any president in over 40 years. We have a chance to undo so much of that, but also to change the way that's done with things like the REINS Act. So I hope you'll take a look at that.